Hello.
Hi, friends. Hi.
Oh, hello, Kate.
I got not a full meow. It was a
Say hers not been feeling good. She's had a
Oh,
little bit of a
no.
UTI.
Oh, no.
Luckily, I had some medicine left over that I probably should have given to somebody else, the whole bottle, but she was fine, so I forgot.
Anyway,
But Lil Cat's feeling a little bit better.
sometimes when little cat's not feeling good, she's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Ma'am.
Ma'am, that's very touchy. You're going to unplug my, it won't affect the podcast. It's neither of the mics. Just my hard drive and my mouse. Don't touch it. Anyway, we're talking about Ireland because we just experienced St. Patty's Day.
Oh, that's why we did this. I was
Yeah.
like, why did we decide? See, I never remember the reason why we choose the episodes that we choose.
It's okay.
So, Irish ghost stories.
Yeah.
Irish spooky
Irish
stories.
spooky stories.
We'll go there.
I'll find a good title before this episode comes out. I feel like I'm pretty good at naming the episodes.
I do like the way you do.
Let's get right into it. What do you got?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
So we're going to talk about the Phoenix Man. So if you're in Dublin and looking for the perfect place to spend a day, Phoenix Park is the place you're looking for. You could soak up the magical views while enjoying a picnic, and you'll probably spot a deer or two. You could also spend the day at the Dublin Zoo, but keep in mind when the sun goes down, it gets kind of scary. If you find yourself out there after the sunset, stick to the pathways and never walk alone. The main character here to be aware of is the Phoenix Man. He's an ill-fated creature that locals have been warned about their whole lives. Only coming out at night, he is never consistent in his appearances, but has been caught on film. He is known to moan and growl painfully from the bushes. Frederick Cavendish, the Chief Secretary for Ireland, arrived in Dublin on May 6, 1882. He attended to some business in Dublin Castle and then walked home in Phoenix Park. Just as he reached the park's entrance, he was met by Permanent Undersecretary Thomas Henry Burke. Burke joined Cavendish on his walk, and the men were approached by a group of 7 men, 3 in front, 2 in the middle, and then 2 in the back of the group. Cavendish and Burke passed through the front 3, who then turned around, and then Cavendish and Burke met the middle 2, Joe Brady and Tim Kelly, who were both wielding surgical knives. Brady stabbed Burke, and Kelly went after Cavendish. The two British officials were killed. The killers then rushed out of the park, meeting 2 cabs. One was driven by Miles Kavanagh, and the other by James Fitzharris, a.k.a. Skin the Goat. This group was known as the Irish National Invincibles, as they left cards in all the major newspapers. So following this heinous act, mass roundups of suspects began. One of the suspects, James Carey, informed the interrogators that the Invincibles had formed in the fall of 1881, looking to make history and establish a following in the Feinin network to assassinate government admins in Ireland. But still, no one knew who these Invincibles were. Also, why did they decide that this was the best way to chase Irish independence? They were a militant group within the Irish Republic, or Feinin. I think that's how you say it. Fenian.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were a militant group within the Irish Republic Brotherhood. This emerged as a result of the coercion of the Land League tenant farmer movement. So now I'm going to go into a little history of that.
Mm-hmm.
Ireland was quite poor at the time, and in the late 19th century, this was shown in the existence of a large tenant farming crisis. The place of the tenant farmer, moreover, had been made quite insecure by the system of landlordism in Ireland, in which tenants had few rights of tenure or rent security against the still largely Anglo-Irish landlord class. In 1878, There was a rather bad harvest and a potato blight, the disease which triggered the Great Famine of the 1840s, had made a comeback. Issues only got worse following another bad winter that next year. This was also met with the unpredictability of capitalism. The value of agricultural produce from Ireland in the British market sunk in response to cheaper imports from other countries. This made it hard, if not impossible, for tenant farmers to pay rent, which created more and more evictions. Actually, the number of evictions went from 406 to 1877 to 1,098 in the very next year.
Oh, wow.
All of this led to the formation of the Irish National Land League in October of 1879. This was also the start of a social revolution on the island of Ireland between 1879 to 1882, aka the Land War. This was both violent and nonviolent fighting between forces of power and privilege and the poor and marginalized. The result of this war would show a shift in the ownership of land in Ireland from landlord to tenant. During the social revolution, tenant farmers were organized into a mass movement under the strong leadership of Irish nationalists, including the former Fenian Michael Davitt and later constitutionalist Charles Stewart Parnell. The conflict was intensified by the shared belief that landlordism was a fundamental aspect of British control in Ireland. The collapse of landlordism, as envisioned by the Land League, would deal a significant blow to British interests in the country. In this context, much of the Land League's philosophy viewed landlordism as a foreign system imposed on the Irish people, aiding in the conquest of Ireland. In this struggle, landlordism had the powerful support of the British political elites who used state resources to counter the serious threat to their authority in Ireland. To counter the unrest of the tenant farmers, the British government announced on January 1st of 1881 its plan to introduce a coercion act aimed at pacifying Ireland, which became law in March. This act was extremely harsh, suspending habeas corpus and trial by jury, and allowing entire districts to be declared disturbed. It was strongly supported by the British government's key official in Ireland, the Chief Secretary at Dublin Castle, William Forster. Forster strongly advocated for and implemented coercion in Ireland, with the efforts managed by his permanent Undersecretary, Thomas Henry Burke. Once the policy was enacted, around 900 members of the Land League were arrested and detained in various prisons across Ireland, culminating in the arrest of Charles Stewart Parnell in October of 1881, followed by his imprisonment in Kilmainham Gaol in Dublin.
Oh, it's just pronounced jail.
Yeah.
The Gaol.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's pronounced jail.
In addition to the harsh measures, British Prime Minister Gladstone introduced a second Land Act which created a land court, though it did not apply to tenant farmers who were behind on payments or in debt. Parnell was released on May 2nd of 1882 under the terms of the so-called Kilmainham Treaty? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
In exchange for his release, Parnell agreed to use his influence to reduce violent land protests in return for significant changes to Gladstone's Second Land Act and a suspension of coercion. It was also understood that he would collaborate with the British Liberal Party in Parliament. I know that you guys are thinking, we didn't come here for a history lesson. We're getting there, I promise.
No, you absolutely came for a history lesson.
I like Ireland. I get into this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, outraged by Parnell's release, the hardline Chief Secretary Forster resigned in protest and was replaced by Frederick Cavendish, Gladstone's niece's husband, who arrived in Ireland on May 6th of 1882. The day before his arrival, Ireland had been plunged into crisis. In Ballina, the Royal Irish Constabulary, is that how you say that? Constabulary? Constabulary? Sounds right. I think so.
Sounds right.
Anyway, they had opened fire and charged at a peaceful crowd, resulting in the deaths of several children under the age of 14. On May 6, 1882, Cavendish, why did I say that like 4 times? When he arrived in Dublin, and him and Burke had met the 7 members of the Irish National Invincibles. Those Invincibles were seeking revenge for those police shootings in Mayo the previous day. These men brutally stabbed both of them to death, making them the highest-ranking British officials ever assassinated in Ireland. The Invincibles, a previously unknown group, claimed responsibility, leaving a card in all major newspapers, as I mentioned earlier, identifying themselves. For the first time in Irish history, Sunday editions of newspapers were published. In the aftermath of the Phoenix Park killings, coercion was reintroduced into Ireland. One of its provisions, Section 16, allowed for what became known as the Star Chamber Inquiry, enabling the state to summon suspects for interrogation under oath without legal representation. Witnesses could be forced to testify in any subsequent trial with imprisonment as punishment for refusal. A major police investigation led by John Mallon of the Dublin Metropolitan Police began. Within a week, Mallon learned from informers who had carried out the assassinations but lacked enough evidence to prosecute them. After another attack by the Invincibles on 2 jurors in Dublin, Section 16 was implemented and suspects were brought in for lengthy interrogations at Dublin Castle under the supervision of John Adai Curran. By January 1883, 25 Invincibles had been arrested by Crown forces, including James Carey, Timothy Kelly, Joseph Hanlon, and others. They were taken to Kilkenny jail, where they were interrogated by Mallon and Curran, who managed to turn several into informers, including Kavanaugh, who had driven 4 Invincibles away from the Phoenix Park after the assassination, Joseph Smith, and notably James Carey. Carey, a leading figure in the Dublin Invincible leadership, was subjected to psychological manipulation. Mallon told him that Daniel Curry had exposed Carey's involvement, and Carey's wife was led to believe the same. Ultimately, Carey cracked under pressure and confessed to his role in the Invincible movement, providing crucial details. Mallon feigned indifference and returned the next day to take his full statement. The prisoners, except for the informers, were first tried in Kilkenny Courthouse and then Green Street Courthouse in Dublin. The extensive interrogations at Kilkenny jail resulted in several more key informers: Robert Farrell, Miles Kavanaugh, Joseph Smith, and Joseph Hanlon, all of whom helped secure the convictions and executions of the Invincibles. On February 19th, Carey testified as the prosecution's star witness, detailing the Invincible movement and the events of May 6, 1882 in Phoenix Park. According to Carey, the Invincibles were formed in the fall of 1881 by John Walsh, a Fenian from Middlesbrough, whose aim was to make history by establishing a group within the Fenian network to assassinate British officials in Ireland. Walsh had been sent to Dublin by Frank Burns, Secretary of the Land League of Great Britain, and his wife later smuggled the knives used in the assassinations. A directory of leading Fenians was created, including James Mullet, Daniel Curley, and Joseph Mullet, all key figures in the movement. Carey also revealed that the Invincibles had attempted to assassinate William Forster, the former Chief Secretary for Ireland, on 19 occasions, but failed due to bad luck and their reluctance to harm innocents.
I mean, fair.
Right. Carey identified a mysterious leader of the movement referred to as Number One, who was later revealed to be Patrick Tynan, a go-between for Byrne in London. However, Tynan's role was exaggerated, and he was not as significant as history suggested. As a result of the trials and information gathered during interrogations at Kilmainham jail, 5 Invincibles were executed by the famous hangman, William Marwood. Marwood was brought from Britain to Dublin specifically to carry out the executions. The 5 executed men were Joseph Brady, Daniel Curley, Michael Fagan, Thomas Caffrey, and Timothy Kelly. Today, in Kilmainham jail, the spot where the gallows were erected, I used it just for you.
Thank you.
To hang, the Invincibles can still be seen. The black iron bars surrounding it were placed to prevent the public from getting too close to the prison entrance or assisting the prisoners in escaping. To the right of Kilmainham Courthouse, there's a small gate in the perimeter wall of the jail, known as the Invincibles Gate, which was built to transport the prisoners to and from the prison without having to risk them outside due to the swelling crowds supporting them. After Joseph Brady's execution, Dublin Metropolitan Police Commissioner John Mellon left Kilmainham jail carrying a parcel under his arm. He was approached by a French journalist, Frederick Moore Bussy, who asked him for details about Brady's execution. Mellon dismissed him and left quickly in a waiting cab. In 1910, Bussy, whatever, recalled...
I would say Busey.
Recalled that he later asked Mellon why he was in such a hurry. Mellon revealed that the parcel that he was holding contained Brady's head.
Oh.
Brady had been beheaded on the orders of Kilmainham's doctor, William Cart, so that his head could be examined at the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin. Busey also claimed that Mellon kept the top of Brady's spine as a souvenir of the Invincible conspiracy and his role in dismantling it. Daniel Curley.
That sounds like something serial killers do.
Right. I think I'm getting close to the end.
Yeah.
Am I though?
You're close.
Okay.
You're about a page length.
Okay. Daniel Curley, referred to by James Carey as the Prime Minister of the Invincibles, while led from the dock in Green Street Courthouse, made a rousing speech deserving of a place within the pantheon of Irish Republican speeches. You will have to be very cautious, my lord, about the informers. I don't seek redress, but of course I expect no mercy. I don't pray for pardon. I expect none from the British government. They are my avowed enemies. I know the position in which I am standing here. I am standing on the brink of the grave. I will speak the truth. I admit I was sworn in to the Fenian, is that what we said?
Yeah, for Fenian.
Fenian organization 12 years ago, when I was only 22 years of age, and from that time to the present, I worked openly in the organization. I was led into a number of their secrets, and I will say here today that I will bring them to my grave faithfully and truly. And as to my own life, if I had 1,000 lives to lose, I would rather lose them sooner than bring to my grave the name of informer, and that I should save my life by betraying my fellow man. I'm a member of the Invincible Society, undoubtedly, unhesitatingly. The 5 Invincibles were buried in a lonely graveyard in Kilmainham jail, intended to be forgotten for all of eternity. Today, the 5 still remain in that lonely yard in Kilmainham, largely forgotten by the majority of the Irish people and unknown to the visitors of the building. Just as other Republican groups did in their wake, the Invincibles were seeking the establishment of Irish Republic. They were Fenians and working class Republicans, aware that Fenians involved in the land war were shooting landlords and landlord agents, and with no great landowners in Dublin, as in the country, they assassinated the 2 most important British government administrators in Ireland and were eventually executed for it in one of the most famous events of the 19th century Ireland. Sealing the chapter of the Invincibles, the informer James Carey would be assassinated in revenge for his testimony against the Invincibles by the Irishman Patrick O'Donnell at the Cape of Good Hope on Why did I write? I think I probably.
That's how it's written.
It is.
Yeah.
I probably copied it from there. June 27th of 1883. O'Donnell was in turn executed at Newgate Prison in London. His remains lying on the grounds of the former prison and later interred into the London City Cemetery.
Nice. That's a pretty good story.
Now, mind you, I copied, pasted, then put together, moved it around, reworded.
Right.
That's all mine. I was so proud of that when I was done.
That's good.
I was like, look at me go. I got so into that story.
That's like me with this one. So Leap Castle, just outside of Roscrea Island, had a bloody history before it was even built. So 2 brothers of the O'Bannon clan challenged each other for leadership of their clan. They were to leap off of the rock where the castle would be built, and their surviving brother would claim leadership, as well as the new castle. So that's how it got its name, Leap Castle. This all happened around 1250, and the castle was named Leap of the Bannons in modern English. While I do have some Irish blood, not near enough for me to know how to pronounce the Irish term, and Google was of very little assistance in obtaining a phonetic pronunciation. Anyhoodle. The O'Bannons were powerful in the area. However, they were the subject of an even more powerful clan, the O'Carroll clan. The O'Carrolls liked the castle, so they simply took it from the O'Bannons, and they managed to keep it until 1649, when it was passed to the Darby family by marriage. The O'Carrolls had to defend the castle a lot during their reign. In 1513, Gerald Fitzgerald, Earl of Kildare, tried to seize the castle without success.
Gerald Fitzgerald. I'm sorry, that took me a minute.
It took me a minute too, and I wrote his name several times. That didn't stop him from trying again, though, 3 years later, and during this attempt, he managed to ruin part of the castle. With the passing of the ownership in the 17th century to the Darby family, one of the O'Carroll daughters married the English Captain Darby. Their son, Jonathan Darby, hid treasures on the grounds of the castle during the English Civil War. Was that the English? No, I think that was supposed to be the Irish. I think that was the Irish Civil War. And he made sure that his secret was kept by killing the 2 men who helped him bury it. He was later imprisoned on charges of treason, and after his release, he returned to the castle, but by then so much had changed that he couldn't find his treasure, and to this day, no one knows where it is hidden.
Okay.
But the most gruesome murder that occurred here, though, was in 1532. This murder took place in the castle's chapel, which is now referred to as the Bloody Chapel.
The Bloody Chapel.
Which I would also like to note, every time I typed chapel in this in my episode notes, I wanted to spell it like Chapel Roan. The clan leader at the time, Mulrooney O'Carroll, died that year, and there was a lot of arguing about who his successor would be. Officially, Thaddeus O'Carroll, Mulrooney's next of kin and the priest of the O'Carroll family, would take the lead, but he was never given the opportunity to actually do so. His younger brother, One-Eyed, Teague O'Carroll, pushed his blade in Thaddeus's back during Mass.
Oh, okay.
Thaddeus bled to death on the altar in front of his entire family.
This is giving the Red Wedding.
Yeah, very much. Oh, it gets worse.
Were you at the house when we watched that?
Was I? Maybe.
Fun story. Brittany used to come to my house every Sunday to watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Crinkle, bitch.
Well, it is said that Thaddeus still haunts the chapel, and people have claimed to see light streaming from its windows, despite the fact that there is no electricity in the castle.
Oh.
Or at least in the Bloody Chapel. He has also been spotted on the staircase, and sometimes there is the smell of burning rubber in the Bloody Chapel. But Thaddeus is just one of the spirits that's said to be haunting this castle. In 1922, a workman discovered a hidden dungeon behind a wall of the Bloody Chapel, and there in the floor they found an oubliette. This word comes from this comes from the French word oublier, which means to forget. And it is a deep hole in the ground where prisoners would be thrown into and simply forgotten about.
Oh my gosh.
No less than 3 cartloads of human bones were removed from it.
Oh.
Over 150 human remains were recovered.
Oh.
Along with the skeletons was a pocket watch, which was dated to around the mid-1800s, which suggests that the dungeon had been used more recently than the O'Carroll clan living there. The bodies had been impaled on long wooden spikes, which were sticking up from the ground, which was about 8 feet from the opening. The bodies, I already read that. Visitors have reported having an overwhelming urge to throw themselves into the dungeon.
Nope.
But
intrusive thoughts.
Right. Intrusive thoughts be like. But the bloodbath doesn't end there. No. At one point during the O'Carroll's reign of terror, they hired about 40 members of the MacMahon clan to train them in new war techniques. The O'Carrolls ultimately won a battle because of this training, and they decided to throw a feast for the MacMahons to thank them for their assistance. However, the food they gave was poisoned.
Okay.
And they just didn't want to pay the MacMahons for their training, and this is just one example of how brutal this clan was. It is said that the MacMahons still roam the castle today, though. There is also a secret room in the castle that is often referred to as the murder hole room. This room's location is kept a secret, and legend says that another member of the O'Carroll family was murdered here by another relative, and this room is said to also be incredibly haunted. There are untold numbers of spirits that are said to be lurking around the castle and its grounds, some friendly, some tragic, and some malevolent, and current owner Sean Ryan knows all of them. When he and his wife purchased the castle in 1991, he wanted to restore it. However, the ghost didn't exactly like this plan. He was pulled off of a ladder twice and injured, and other various things occurred during his attempts to restore it that simply could not be explained. He decided to call upon the spirits and told them that he wanted their home to be restored and said that they could stick around if they wanted to. He said after this, things got better, though.
Oh, okay.
There is the spirit of an old man that is frequently seen in an armchair near the main hall's fireplace. Little is known about him, although he is said to be harmless. The main hall is the primary domain for 2 little girls, Emily and Charlotte. Emily died at age 11 after falling from the castle's battlements.
Okay.
And people have reported seeing a girl falling from a great height and disappearing right before she hits the ground. Charlotte is seen walking with a limp and seems to have a deformed leg. There is also another spirit seen alongside these girls, and she is often referred to as the governess. She seems to take care of them, and they are all most likely lived there in about the 16th century. There's also the spirit of a monk who haunts the priest's house, which was built in 1571. And the house was almost totally destroyed by fire in 1922 during the Irish Civil War. But before the fire, visitors were able to stay here, and people who did said that it would feel as though something very heavy, like a person, was in the bed with them, and would even claim to hear snoring.
Okay.
There's also a spirit that resides in the dungeon, but it seems as though he just likes to take a walk in the lower parts of the castle from time to time. There's also a scantily clad but terrified woman that's seen frequently as well. She always lets out 2 blood-curdling screams before she disappears, but she's never harmed anybody.
Listen, I would harm myself.
Yeah.
I would shit myself and hurt myself trying to get out.
Rather than a lady in white or a gray lady, Leap Castle has a red lady, and she has a terrifying and tragic story as well. She's often seen in the Blue Room, which used to be a nursery, but she has been spotted in other areas of the castle. She wears a long red dress, and she is tall and lean and has long brown hair. Now, there are 2 legends that are theorized as to her origin story. The first says that she was a rape victim of one of the O'Carrolls and he got her pregnant. And when the child was born, the O'Carrolls killed the baby with a dagger. In this version, she managed to take the dagger and kill herself with it. In another version, she attempted to flee the brutal O'Carrolls and was chased down and stabbed to death. Mildred Darby claimed to have seen the Red Lady crying in the blue room. I don't know why. Earlier, I giggled at that sentence. The Red Lady crying in the blue room. But a little more on Mildred in a minute. But Leap Castle is also the home to a dark ancient entity called an elemental. This entity has never been human. Prior to the castle being built, this land belonged to the Druids, and it was a very fertile land and was of significance to them. And it is believed that they called upon an elemental for protection for their sacred land. Others say that Gerald Fitzgerald called upon it to curse the O'Carrolls. It is said that the elemental has the power to destroy the castle from within, and it was partly demolished during Fitzgerald's second attempt to take it over. This elemental does not show itself unless it is challenged, and the last time it was seen, allegedly, was in 2006. Now, Mildred Darby also claimed to have seen the elemental, and she used to perform black magic. She began practicing while she lived at the castle, and it is also thought that this is what unleashed the primitive elemental entity. In 1909, Mildred gave an interview to a magazine called Journal Occult Review, in which she said, "I was in the gallery and looked at the floor when I suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder. The thing was the size of a sheep, and it was thin and shadow-like. The face was human, and it was not. His decomposed eyes showed some kind of lust. At that point, I smelled a horrible smell which made me ill. It was the smell of a decomposing body." She lived to tell her story, whether it's true or not, but either way, just in case, don't challenge an elemental. If you come across one, just don't do it. Leap Castle was burned and partly destroyed in 1922 by Irish civilians because the castle was in English hands, and because of this, the Darbys left. It remained in ruin until musician Sean Ryan and his wife Anne purchased it in 1991. He rebuilt the castle based on pictures from prior to its destruction. The Ryans have claimed to see many, many spirits during their time here, but have never seen the elemental themselves. They reside in harmony with the spirits of the castle. And you can visit the castle every day but Sunday should you ever find yourself in Ireland.
Nice. All right, so the Malahide Castle is a grand estate dating back to the 12th century. It's situated just north of Dublin and is widely known for its rich history and eerie reputation as one of the most haunted castles in Ireland. The castle sits on 260 acres and was originally granted to Sir Richard Talbot, who accompanied Henry II during the Anglo-Norman conquest of Ireland in 1174. The oldest sections of the castle date back to the late 12th century, with further additions made during the reign of Edward VI. And is that right? That's right. No, the fourth.
Hold on.
Ivy, that's the fourth.
Yeah.
During the reign of Edward IV and the construction of towers in 1625. I had a moment of dyslexia.
It happens.
For nearly 800 years, the Talbot family owned the castle with the exception of a brief period between 1649 and 1660, when the property was seized by Oliver Cromwell and given to Miles Corbett, one of his loyalists. Corbett, notorious for his oppressive actions, including outlawing Catholicism and attacking local abbeys, became hated by the locals. After the monarchy was restored, Corbett was captured and executed at Malahide Castle, and his ghost continues to haunt the grounds, often appearing in a suit of armor that slowly disassembles.
Hell no.
In 1690, the Talbots fought in the Battle of the Boyne, a major conflict between the Jacobite forces loyal to the deposed King James II and those of William of Orange. 14 members of the Talbot family gathered for breakfast on July 1st, only for all but one to be killed by evening. Despite their loss, the Talbots' property was not confiscated, and they retained control over Malahide. Their Catholic faith did not lead to the seizure of their property under penal laws, a significant exception during this period. The family experienced its fair share of personal tragedies, including the tale of Miss Maud Plunkett, a young woman who fell in love with Lord Walter Hussey, whatever.
I think it's Hussey.
The Lord of Galtrim. Two versions of this tragic story exist. One suggests that Galtrim was ambushed and killed on his way to the wedding, while the other states that he died in battle shortly after marrying Maud. Regardless, Lord Galtrim's spirit is said to haunt the castle, groaning and pointing to the spear wound on his side. Some say his ghost moans because Maud eventually married his rival, further deepening his tragic end.
No.
Maud later married a third time, but her new marriage was fraught with tension. She became possessive and abusive toward her second husband, the Lord Chief Justice. According to the legend, her ghost is now said to pursue the spirit of Lord Chief Justice throughout the halls of Malahide Castle. Another ghost in residence at Malahide is that of Puck, a dwarf jester and watchman for the Talbot family. Now, excuse me. Please note that this is said with all respect.
I fear this may be something you don't want to say. If you have to preface it this way, should you say it?
I have all the love in the world for small people.
Yeah, I love little people.
I love them.
Of course.
Listen, my hear me out.
Peter Dinklage.
Yeah. Hear me out.
I get it. Hey, I'm sat and listening.
Anyway, if I'm going to see a ghost.
Listen, if I see the ghost of a dwarf jester,
I would be both terrified and ecstatic at the same time. It would be the most confused my body has ever been.
Yeah, I can concur with that. That wasn't that bad. I don't know why you had to preface it the way you did. That made it sound like you were going to say something super problematic.
I was afraid that my mouth would come out with terms that probably shouldn't be used. I was trying to think of the...
You were trying to not say a slur.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Puck became infatuated with Lady Eleonora Fitzgerald, a kinswoman of the Talbots, who was imprisoned for her rebellious behavior. In some versions...
I bet she was so cool.
Right. In some versions of the story, Puck hanged himself in despair, either due to rejection or his failure in his duties.
Aww.
Other versions say that he was tragically stabbed to death on a snowy night outside the castle grounds while wearing his jester's outfit. Before dying, Puck vowed to haunt Malahide Castle, and today his mischievous spirit is said to enjoy photobombing visitors. Please do.
He gives me Peeves from Harry Potter vibes. The books. He's not in the movies. He's in the books.
I wouldn't know that.
Peeves the poltergeist. The book girlies, no.
I mean, I feel like I've read...
He was the best.
Them, but...
It gives me those vibes. If you know, you know.
The castle is also home to a mysterious spirit known as the White Lady.
It would, like I say later in my notes, it wouldn't be an episode about ghosts or anything spooky if we didn't have a white lady, a gray lady, and now we can add a red lady to the repertoire.
In a blue room.
In a blue room. Crying.
Her identity remains a mystery, as does the identity of the artist who painted the portrait of her that hangs in the Great Hall. The woman in the portrait is always depicted with a tragic expression, because why not? And on occasion, her ghost is said to step out of the frame and wander the castle halls. That's given Harry Potter.
You imagine you take a gummy and see that shit? That is also does give Harry Potter vibes.
The mystery surrounding the White Lady is just one of the many unexplained incidents associated with the castle. In addition to the many specters that haunt the castle, There are numerous unexplainable occurrences reported by staff and visitors. Locked doors inexplicably unlock themselves. Doors that are open suddenly slam shut, and unseen hands seem to push people as they walk down hallways. Water taps mysteriously turn on and off. These incidents add to the eerie atmosphere of the castle, further cementing its reputation as one of the most haunted places in Ireland. Malahide Castle remained in the Talbot's family possession until 1976. After the death of the 7th Baron, Lord Milo Talbot, the estate passed to his sister Rose. Unable to cover the inheritance taxes, Rose sold the castle to the Irish state in 1975. Rose lived out the rest of her life in Tasmania and passed away peacefully in 2009. Today, Malahide Castle is open to the public, offering a glimpse into its rich and haunting history. Visitors are welcome to explore its eerie halls, where they might encounter the restless spirits that continue to roam the ancient grounds forever tied to the castle's storied past.
I like that.
How many stories do you say you had?
I just have 4. And I lined mine up exactly so that I could tell mine, not this story, but the next one after your next story.
Okay. I was making sure that I got to do the one that I wanted to, which I think I will.
Dame Alice Kyteler was born in the 13th century to a noble Kilkenny family, and was the first person to be accused of witchcraft in Ireland.
She's a witch!
Oh.
That's all I hear every time.
She was nicknamed the Happy Widower because 3 of Alice's husbands died from illness or under mysterious circumstances, which left her with their wealth.
Get it.
When her 4th husband, Sir John Lepoer, fell gravely ill, he changed his will to benefit Alice and her only son, which left his relatives quite bitter. This began a chain of events that led to locals leveling charges of witchcraft and sorcery against Alice.
See, look, listen to me. Women
can't do shit.
Can't do nothing. We're witches if we step in.
If our husbands are old and dying, I mean, they were probably like 27 and like.
Does that make Anna Nicole Smith a witch?
Witch! She was
like how that's where my brain went.
Right.
Nicole Smith.
She was held in the dungeons of Kilkenny Castle, and her hopes of being freed diminished with each passing day until her former brother-in-law, who was now the Chancellor of Ireland, orchestrated her escape from the castle and the death sentence that awaited her. Alice fled to England, but her maid, Petronella, was burned at the stake in her stead in front of a bloodthirsty crowd on November 3rd, 1324, and it is rumored that Petronella still haunts the area. Also associated with the area is the tale of 2 bridges. During the 18th century, there was a great flood in the town of Kilkenny. Many locals gathered on St. John's Bridge to watch the collapse of Green's Bridge from just across the way. But imagine their surprise when the bridge they were standing on began to give way and crumble beneath their feet. Many were unable to reach land in time, and 16 people plunged to their deaths in the river below.
That's funny, but it's not funny.
Why? What did you think was going to happen? In the midst of the early morning, it has been claimed that the spirits of these 16 souls can still be seen in various places along St. John's Bridge, which was reconstructed in the 20th century. Locals have also claimed to have seen spirits in the river trying to swim to the other side, or just wistfully peering into the river from above. One of the primary features of the town is Kilkenny Castle, and it has a long, dark history as well that spans from its construction in 1195. It is now in the care of the state and is open to public tours, and numerous visitors each year report seeing ghostly apparitions wandering around its stately rooms. It wouldn't be a ghost story episode if we didn't have a white lady, though. Now we've had 2. Sure. And the White Lady of Kilkenny Castle is said to be Lady Margaret Butler. She is famous for being the paternal grandmother of Anne Boleyn, who was the second wife of King Henry VIII of England.
Sorry, that was aggressive.
It's okay. Lady Margaret was born in Kilkenny Castle, and many believe that she returned here following her death abroad. There are also other paranormal experiences that occur in the building, such as the cameras that record visitor numbers. So these cameras are known for continuing to record even when the visitors have all left for the day and the gates have been closed and locked for the night, which defies any explanation from staff because the electronic counter is located in a room above the dungeon where countless souls met their end. So maybe it's them. Maybe they're just walking around doing a little tour.
All right. So the Banshee is one of Ireland's most iconic and enduring folklore figures. So I saw this one and I was like, oh, I gotta do it. Because, like, for some reason, Banshees that's always been an interesting thing to me.
Yeah. I like the idea of a Banshee. I'm alright. I gotta shift. Get out of this chair.
I thought you said you had to shit. I was like, okay. Commonly heard about from grandparents, often told to children to coax them into sleep, the Banshee story remains an integral part of Irish tradition.
Coax them into sleep?
Right. I kind of found that as odd. Her cry is unmistakable, a high-pitched, mournful wail that pierces the night air, warning of an impending death. So, like, the kids are like, I better hurry up and go to sleep so I don't hear her, and I'm going to die. Known as being Siddi. Again, like Brittany said, not Irish enough for that.
Yeah. And I don't want to be offensive, so I'm not even gonna.
It translates to the woman of the fairy mound. The Banshee is believed to be a spirit connected to particular families. Her sole purpose being to announce the death of a family member. The belief in the Banshee dates back many centuries, with the supernatural becoming a staple of Irish folklore. Here we go again.
It's awfully funny that we picked an Irish episode when both of us can barely speak normal words.
Right. The Banshees. Oh wait, I already read that. Hold on. No, I didn't. So her primary role is to foretell death, although she does so not by directly affecting the person who will pass away, but by being heard only by their loved ones. Her mournful wail, carried on the wind, serves as a grim premonition. The cry is believed to be an omen that the family is about to lose someone. It is said that every Banshee mourns for a particular family lineage, with her cry only heard when death is near for a family member of that family. While she is not seen as a malevolent spirit, her haunting wail can leave a chilling sense of foreboding in those who hear it. The Banshee's role as a harbinger of death ties deeply into Irish mythology, particularly in the belief of the city. I don't see, like, letters that
it's
are pronounced.
Honestly, because it's Irish, it probably doesn't even sound at all like the way it's spelled.
Or fairy mounds. So that's just what we're going to call them from this point forward. These earthen mounds, known as tumuli, date back to the Neolithic age were believed to be gateways into the realm of the Tuatha De Danann, a mystical people who were pushed underground by the Milesians, the ancestors of the Irish people, around 1000 BCE. The Tuatha De Danann were often described as magical beings, and it was said that the fairy mounds, fairy mounds, were the remnants of their kingdom. The female spirits connected to these mounds were called banshees, or women of the mounds. These spirits, while originally representing a more generalized group of female fairy figures, later became more specifically associated with death omens. Banshees are not simply for warning of death, their function also extends to foretelling other forms of tragedy or misfortune. For instance, the banshee of the O'Donnell family is said to weep for all the misfortunes that befall the family, not just those related to death. There are even so-called banshee chairs, wedge-shaped rocks across Ireland, where a banshee may sit and lament in times of misfortune when there is no death to announce.
Am I a banshee? I do be sitting and wailing.
Though the banshee's presence is most often marked by the sound of her mournful cry, there are numerous descriptions of how she might appear. She may be seen as a beautiful young woman in a white shroud, her long flowing hair bright against the night. In other accounts, she may be an older woman with gray or white hair, wearing a green or black dress, or sometimes covered by a veil. The banshee's appearance can vary widely, from a terrifying crone with blood red eyes to a more gentle figure in flowing garments. Some tales describe the banshee as an otherworldly figure, unnaturally tall or even diminutive, standing only a foot high in some stories. The most unsettling forms of the banshee include accounts of a headless woman, or even one who carries a bowl of blood, a symbol of death's inevitability.
Ew.
And this is how I know I've been watching too much Supernatural, because I'm like, is she contacting?
Is she
the
talking to
underworld with that?
Yeah, is she talking to demons?
The variety of descriptions of the banshee's appearance draws comparisons to the Celtic goddess of war and death, the Morrigan, who also appears as a crow. In Irish mythology, the Morrigan is known to predict death in battle, sometimes washing the bloodstained clothes of those doomed to die, similar to how the banshee is said to announce death. The Morrigan's association with crows, a bird that also appears in banshee lore, further ties the two figures together. The Morrigan herself is often depicted as a triad of goddesses, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, much like the banshee's shifting appearances from a young woman to an older, more frightening crone. This is connection between the banshee and the Morrigan that shows the blending of mythologies and traditions in Irish culture, creating a complex and multifaceted view of death and the supernatural. The banshee's cry, known as keening, has deep roots in Irish tradition. The practice of keening dates back to at least the 8th century and was used to mourn the dead, much like the banshee's cry. The keening tradition was once performed by bards or hired women who would wail and sing lamentations for the deceased.
Please hire women to keen at my funeral.
Got it.
Thank you.
Noted. While bard songs were often structured, keening was more improvisational. This practice has parallels in other cultures, such as the Opari in southern India, where women sing spontaneous songs of mourning for the dead. In Ireland, keening became a central part of funeral rites, though it has largely faded from use in the modern era. A rare example of an authentic keening song was recorded in the 1950s by ethnomusicologist Alan Lomax, offering a glimpse into what it might have been like to hear a banshee's mournful wail in the dead of night.
Ooh, I might have to look into that.
Right. Regional differences in the banshee's cry also exist. In Kerry, for example, the banshee's cry is said to be a more pleasant song, while in Rathlin Island, the wail is described as a thin screech, similar to that of an owl. In Leinster, the wail is so piercing it is said to be capable of shattering glass.
Ooh.
The banshee's warning is not just for anyone. She is primarily tied to specific families, like I said, usually those with Gaelic surnames beginning with like O or Mac. Families such as O'Neills, O'Briens, O'Grady's, and O'Connors, and are traditionally thought to have their own designated banshee. However, some sources suggest that even families of non-Gaelic origin, such as the Anglo-Normal Geraldines or the Bunworths of County Cork, have their own banshee. Despite her association with specific families, the banshee's role in announcing death is not always one of sorrow. Some folk tales depict her as a more malevolent figure, delighting in the misfortunes she foresees. In these stories, the banshee's cry is a fiendish screech, a joyful herald of tragedy rather than a mourning lament. Beyond Ireland, similar death omens appear in other cultures. In Scotland, the washerwoman serves as a role similar to the banshee, washing the bloody clothes of the soon-to-die. In Wales, the Hag of the Mists is said to appear at a person's window and call their name, much like a banshee's cry. These figures share the same themes of foretelling death, tying them together as a part of a broader tradition of death omens in Celtic cultures. While the banshee remains a mysterious and terrifying figure, she is also an enduring symbol of Ireland's rich folklore and the belief in the supernatural. Her cries continue to echo in the Irish countryside, a reminder of the thin veil between life and death and the traditions that have shaped Irish culture for centuries. Can you imagine just the feeling? Like when you step off a plane, you get out of the airport in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just imagine that? It just, to me, it feels thick. I've never been there. I don't know.
I would imagine that all of Europe and,
It's thick.
yeah, it's probably quite palpable.
See, TJ and I were talking about that the other day.
Our history here it's not as long.
Right.
Like, we don't know what was going on here in 41 AD.
Right. It's crazy to me how you can just, places have different feelings. Like TJ and I were discussing this the other day. He is not a believer in supernatural things at all.
Yeah.
But like he even said, we stepped out of, the airport in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Felt nothing. Now there were areas where it was like, and he even said specifically before I could say it, when we went to Congo Square.
Yeah.
He said it just felt different. It was crazy to him how the atmosphere just felt different.
Yeah.
But he said in Savannah, he was like, it was thick. It felt so weird. He was like, you could just tell that it was there.
It's always in like the oldest.
Yes.
I feel like the oldest
where there's
cities
more history.
Right. Where there was more like colonization happened in those places earlier.
Yes.
And there's more of a written history for those areas. Because like, I mean, like for example, my house, I like how you keep moving the mic away every time you fart. But like, just for example, like my house, I don't know what all's going on here.
Right.
I just know my house is the only one that's been on this piece of property, in modern history anyway. But like, you go outside here, the air feels a little more light, a little more airy, but then you go even into Nashville, there's some spots that it's just like, it's thick.
See, for me,
Willow, she gonna start acting up. She wants out of here.
It don't matter where I am here in this property. It feels, okay, outside feels thicker than the inside the house does.
I will say yes.
Anymore.
Outside, I think there's some funny business going on with some fairies, if I'm going to be honest. I think the backyard is loaded with them.
Well,
but
my house,
I don't want to sound too crazy.
Right. My house, my yard.
Yeah.
It's
it's
when
the
it
same.
Dark,
it's the same shit. You got shit going on in your yard.
It's well, even my house sometimes.
Yeah.
It's thick. She thick. You should see. When I leave here from recording, especially when it's like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And I get home.
Willow Dean, what are you doing?
Hold on. Let me let her out. She's like, open this door.
She's like, I'm going to tear up this whole room. Let me out of here.
When I leave here and get home at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
You ain't never seen a white girl bolt as fast as I do. Like, I'm pulling in the driveway.
Yeah.
Before I turn the car off.
You got your like shit ready to run?
I've got all my stuff in my hands. I got everything ready to go. I turn the car off. I jump out and I bolt into the door.
Yeah.
Every time.
See, out here, I do, like, especially in, like, spring or fall, I'll just sit on the porch at, like, 11 o'clock at night. It is so quiet.
Which is amazing for all the crackheads you got.
Oh, yeah. For sure. But it just gets so quiet. And it's so nice.
I mean,
that's got to be, like, a weeknight, though. On a weekend, no. There's always going to be somebody somewhere around here hollering, shooting. There ain't no telling.
It does around my house, which is crazy because I'm between two busy roads.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like if it snows.
Yeah.
It is so quiet.
Yeah.
It is so quiet.
See, my neighborhood gets a little bit louder whenever it snows because that's when everybody gets out on their little four-wheelers. Well, that's where all their money goes. If it's not
God forbid,
it's gasoline for their four-wheelers.
In tax time, it gets even worse. Anyway,
I will say it has calmed down.
Well,
quite a bit in recent history.
Remember how I said I didn't like these?
Yeah. See, they're a lot better when you don't try to peel them. It's just
I got some of the peelers gummies.
You remember?
Like
I mean,
candies.
I think they were like people were looking for them for a while, like because only like Walgreens carried them, and they were always sold out. The banana ones I like, and I
don't like banana flavored things.
The only reason why I don't like actually peeling them though is the inside is just so sticky.
It is, but it's like it's better if you eat it like you would a normal gummy fruit
stuff. But like if you were gonna just sit there and peel it, it's disgusting. But to piggyback off of your last one, I almost did this one first in my lineup, and then I was like, wait a minute, she had Banshee. I was like, now, first of all, let me go look and make sure that she doesn't mention this story in hers, and I was like, good, she didn't, I get to do it. But I knew I had to move it to after you were going to read that. So, Duckett's Grove was built in 1745 as a 2-story Georgian country house for the Duckett family. I sure do like picking Georgian-style homes.
Right.
The Duckett's Grove was later redesigned in 1830 by John Dawson Duckett, and turrets, arches, and ornaments were added. The manor's estate used to be in the center of 12,000 acres of land, but that has now been reduced to just 5,000 acres of land. To me, both of those are big numbers. That sounds like lots of land.
Right.
The bloodline of the Duckett family can be traced all the way back to William the Conqueror and King Edward I, but in the 17th century, George Duckett decided to abandon England for Ireland. The last of the Duckett bloodline to live in the manor was William Dawson Duckett, who died in 1908, and the home was abandoned when his second wife, Maria, moved to Dublin in 1916. After she moved, the manor had several residents until it was destroyed in a fire on April 19, 1933. Legend says that Mr. William Duckett had a very young mistress, and the young girl was killed in a riding accident on the grounds of the estate. Her grief-stricken mother is said to have cursed the family and the manor house by calling upon a banshee, which we just learned about. The story goes that a woman once heard the cry of the banshee and immediately died on the grounds of the estate. A gardener also heard the cry and found his mother dead the next morning. But the banshee is not the only entity that is said to be residing at Duckett's Grove. In 2011, Duckett's Grove was visited by the crew of the show Destination Truth, and they visited the manor on St. Patrick's Day and caught some unexplained phenomena on camera. They witnessed strange figures, light anomalies, and heard heavy, hollow sounds coming from within the house. And they aren't the only ones that have claimed to have experienced strange things here. Others have said that they have seen shadow people, floating lights, orbs, and heard loud bangs from within the manor. There have also been reports of full-bodied apparitions, and these are believed to be the spirits of members of the Duckett family. William Duckett's ghost has been spotted riding around the estate on horseback just before vanishing into thin air. Once a group claimed that they saw an entire phantom fox hunting party that were ready for action. What remains of Duckett's Grove Manor House was acquired by Carlow County Council in 2005, and they refurbished the gardens, including the walled gardens, which are now open to the public. Despite the manor itself not being accessible, there is a tea house in the courtyard where you can sit and enjoy the beautiful views.
Okay, so this one struck my curiosity just based off of the name.
This one was on my list. It was at the top of my list.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But that's fine. I still had some pretty good ones.
So this one is the Hellfire Club, a ruin perched atop Montpelier Hill in the Dublin Mountains, has a history steeped in mystery, dark rituals, and chilling folklore. This isolated hunting lodge overlooks the capital city of Dublin, adding to its eerie reputation. Originally, the site was far more sacred, dated back to the Neolithic period, approximately 4,500 to 2000 BC. It was once the site of an ancient Irish passage grave, also known as a cairn, or cairn, where sacred burial rituals likely took place. The stone structures that marked these burial sites were revered by ancient... Is it revered?
Yeah.
Okay. By ancient Irish, and the land was considered sacred. I know how sometimes I read words, and in my head I say them differently than what they're supposed to be, and then I say it, and then you're like, try this. So well, I'm like, let me check it.
I mean, I'm also, too, like, I'll read words and I'll have never heard it spoken before.
Right.
And I'm like, we'll go with it.
In the early 1700s, however, William Connolly, a wealthy Irish speaker and landowner, decided to build a hunting lodge at the very location where the ancient tombs lay. Connolly's disregard for the sanctity of the land would prove to be a fateful decision. He demolished part of the ancient burial site, even using the stones from the grave to build his new hunting lodge. Notably, Connolly uprooted an ancient standing stone to serve as the lintel above the fireplace, an act that many believe disturbed the spirits of the ancestors. The land had long been held in reverence by the Irish people, and Connolly's construction of the lodge was seen by some as an act of desecration. Soon after the lodge was completed, a violent storm struck the area, and the roof of the newly built lodge was blown off. Local legend attributed this to the wrath of the spirits who had been disturbed by Connolly's construction. Undeterred, Connolly replaced the roof with a barrel-vaulted ceiling, but the ominous events surrounding the lodge only seemed to deepen. In 1725, his hunting lodge, named Montpelier, was finished. The secluded location on Montpelier Hill, surrounded by dense woodlands, known as Hellfire Hill Wood, made it a prime spot for aristocratic gatherings. Its isolation, with sweeping views of Dublin City, made the place ideal for extravagant parties and hunting expeditions, but little did the locals know, this lodge would soon gain a sinister reputation. The land once considered sacred was now the site of dark rituals and depraved activities. The Hellfire Club, known for its association with immoral behavior, was founded by Richard Parsons, the first Earl of Ross, and James Worsdale in 1773. Originally a group from the upper classes to indulge in debauchery, the Hellfire Club had ties to occult practices and rituals, with members frequently engaging in alcohol-fueled revelry, sexual promiscuity, and the worship of darker forces. It wasn't long before Connolly's hunting lodge, with its rich history, came into the hands of the Irish chapter of the Hellfire Club. This was where the lodge's already tainted reputation grew even darker. Many of the Hellfire Club's members were known to dabble in black magic and occult practices, and the lodge became a site for their sinister ceremonies. The rituals held here were said to include sacrifices of animals, including black cats, and possibly even humans. Rumors spread of a leader within the club known as the King of Hell, who dressed in a Satan-like attire with wings and horns and held ritualistic ceremonies that sometimes involved the worship of the devil.
Let me just say, if I was somewhere and a grown-ass man come out calling himself the King of Hell and dressed with wings and horns, I would laugh. I would get killed, but I would laugh.
I'd be like, "You're not Crowley."
I would. Why are you cosplaying as the devil? Put on some clothes. Get out of here.
Among the most famous legends surrounding the Hellfire Club is the tale of the devil himself visiting the lodge. One particularly chilling story recounts an evening when a man seeking refuge from a winter storm entered the lodge and joined the members in a game of poker. As the game progressed, one of the players dropped a card, bent down to pick it up. When he looked up at the stranger, he was horrified to see that the man had cloven hoofs instead of human feet. In a flash, the stranger vanished in a ball of fire, never to be seen again. The next morning, the Hellfire Club was found burned to the ground, leaving only the crumbling ruins that stand today. The surrounding snow was said to be marked by cloven hoof prints, further cementing the belief that the devil himself had visited.
He said, "I don't like this shit y'all doing here.
Right.
In my name? You're going to taint my name? You're going to have a man running around here in wings and with horns, calling himself the King of Hell? Not on my watch."
See, I was about to say something, then I lost it. It was there and it was gone. Anyway.
Sorry.
Another disturbing tale involves a young boy who witnessed the club's horrific rituals and was so traumatized that he never spoke again. The sight of what he had seen in the lodge left him mentally scarred for life. Some say he was driven mad by the dark acts taking place within, never able to speak again after witnessing the unspeakable horrors. Personally, I think they said voodoo, 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 and made sure that he couldn't tell anybody what he saw.
Yeah, or they threatened him.
Well, as years passed, the Hellfire Club's reputation continued to grow darker with stories of ghostly encounters and sinister occurrences surrounding the lodge. One of the most well-known of these tales involves a massive black cat believed to be a demonic entity haunting the club. According to the legend, a local man who had ventured to the Hellfire Club to see what went on inside was found dead the next morning. His body was discovered by a farmer and a priest who went to investigate the lodge. Upon entering the building, they found a lavish banquet set for a feast. But the room was empty except for a large black cat prowling the hallways.
Amara.
The priest, sensing the presence of something evil, performed an exorcism, and in a violent confrontation, the demonic cat was torn apart by the power of holy water. However, the priest and the farmer didn't escape unscathed. Upon leaving the lodge, the priest discovered that the farmer had been attacked by the cat, leaving deep claw marks on his face and body. The incident served to reinforce the belief that the Hellfire Club was cursed and that the spirits of the dark rituals and sacrifices still lingered within the crumbling walls of the lodge. Today, the Hellfire Club remains a burnt and abandoned ruin, but it continues to attract those intrigued by its dark history. Even now, strange occurrences have been reported in the area, with locals and visitors claiming to hear eerie noises and smell unusual scents emanating from the lodge at night. Despite being abandoned, it is said that the lingering spirits of the club's past still haunt the area, guarding the site of their former rituals. The Hellfire Club, now an iconic location in Irish folklore, stands as a chilling reminder of a dark and debauched chapter in history. Though the building itself is no longer a site for occult practices, the legend surrounding it remains alive. For those brave enough to visit, it remains a place where the line between the past and the present seems to blur, and the spirits of the Hellfire Club's horrific rituals continue to cast a long, ominous shadow over Dublin City. It's still free to visit during the day, but it's best approached with caution, because of its anything but ordinary history.
Yeah. I've definitely heard of the Hellfire Club, but I've never, read into it. Damn. There was something I was going to say, but I forgot. No, I guess it wasn't that important.
So think about that the next time.
What I was going
to... the next season of Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah. I remembered it and then I forgot it again.
Sorry.
Oh, well. Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Oh. Can you imagine?
Was this it?
Yeah.
Are you debating on whether or not to say it?
No, it's gone again.
Oh, God.
That's part of having ADHD.
Can you imagine?
It's fine. Anyway, so the Crumlin Road Jail, which was spelled Gaol, and I was very confused, and I was like, how do you pronounce that? So I Googled it, and it was like, you literally say it like jail. I was like, and then when I heard you try to pronounce it earlier, I was like, it's jail! Because it does not look like jail.
Right.
First opened in 1845 and was based partly on London's H.M. Prison Pentonville, Crumlin Road was designed by English architect Sir Charles Lanyon to replace the small country jail on Antrim Street in Carrickfergus. A common practice at the time, the prison was designed to encourage the separate system, whereby prisoners were kept apart. In 1846, the first 106 inmates, that included men, women, and children, were marched 11 miles in chains from the original jail.
Can I just say, because you said Carrickfergus, anytime the word Fergus is mentioned,
Fergus. The conditions here were brutal and oppressive, and impoverished children as young as 6 or 7 were held for petty crimes such as stealing food. Can you imagine Easton in prison?
He'd never make it.
At his young age?
He'd never make it. The fact that he was confined to one space, he
God.
would implode.
With no Hot Wheels?
He would, no, that's not even the issue. The fact that he would just be confined to one room.
That would be a nightmare.
It really shocks me. Was it last weekend? There was one day where he literally only came out of his room to get food and to go to the bathroom on his own volition.
Yeah.
And I was like...
So it begins.
I was like, do you feel good?
Okay, Mara, how do you keep taking over more and more of this chair?
I kept asking him, I'm like, are you sure you feel good today? Because you can't say, do you feel bad? Or, you have to say, do you feel good?
Yeah.
But I'm like, do you feel good? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, are you sure? Yeah. And I'm like, okay. I haven't seen you all day.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
In 1858, after being sentenced to just 3 months, 13-year-old Patrick McGee hung himself in his cell. The original designs did not include gallows, as until 1901, executions were held publicly in front of crowds of up to 20,000 people outside of the prison.
Okay.
Following that, an execution chamber was added, and the final hanging took place there in 1961 of murderer Robert McGladdery, and this was the last hanging in all of Northern Ireland.
Wow.
I don't know about Southern Ireland. I don't know what they're doing.
1961.
Escape attempts were common, despite the Crumb being given the moniker of Europe's Alcatraz. Crumlin Road Jail closed on March 31st, 1996. And today you can take guided tours of the underground tunnels from the courthouse across the road to the prison, the hanging cell, the historic holding cells, governor's office, graveyard, sea wing, and the hospital. Both paranormal investigators and regular visitors to the former prison have reported seeing and hearing strange things here. Doors have been known to slam shut by themselves, and both female and male voices have been heard crying out for help. There is also a man seen walking down the sea wing and disappearing right in front of their eyes. There have been several paranormal investigations, and they do conduct regular ghost tours, but it has been warned that these tours are not for the weak. The sight of the hangman's rope can send shivers, can shiver your timbers. Both men and women were executed in the jail, and it is said that many of them remain here. The building is filled with grief and sadness, and one of the spookiest places is said to be the basement drop cell, and this is where the executed is set to dangle until they are confirmed dead. This spot has left many with feelings of fear and are left shaken. If you want the opportunity to see or hear the spirits for yourself, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump over to Belfast, Ireland. And that was my last one.
Oh, you get the good one.
You can read whichever one you want.
No, it's fine. We'll go in order. So the next one is the Doulahan.
Mm-hmm.
The legend of the Doulahan, a headless horseman, is one of the most chilling tales in Irish mythology. Known as the embodiment of death, the Doulahan has haunted the Irish countryside for centuries. His terrifying appearance and the ominous warning he brings are features that have captivated storytellers for generations. The tale has evolved over time, yet its core elements remain deeply rooted in the rich traditions of Irish folklore. The Doulahan's origins can be traced back to ancient Irish beliefs about death and the afterlife. In a culture where the boundary between physical and spiritual realms was often fluid, death was not seen as an end, but a part of a continuous cycle. The Doulahan embodies this understanding of mortality. He is seen as a spectral figure who moves through the world of the living to collect the souls of the dead, serving as a grim reminder of the inevitable fate that awaits all. The first known references to the Doulahan date back to the 18th century. Thomas Moore, an Irish poet, was among the first to describe this figure in his writings. His portrayal of the Doulahan as a fearsome entity who roams the land solidified the myth's place in Irish culture. The Annals of the Four Masters. I read this initially and was like, the Annals? The Annals of the Four Masters, a historical text, also mentions similar figures, highlighting the long-standing tradition of death-related folklore in Ireland. These early mentions point to the importance of death in Irish culture and the belief that death itself could take on a form. According to the mythology, the Doulahan is depicted as a tall, dark figure, often riding a black horse. However, his most distinctive feature is his headless appearance.
Oh yeah, brother.
In many versions of the story, he carries his own severed head under one arm with a grimacing face and glowing eyes.
Ooh.
His presence instills terror, and his glowing eyes are said to have the ability to see far and wide, enabling him to locate those who are destined to die. The Doulahan is often described wearing a dark cloak that flows behind him as he rides through the countryside, adding to his ghostly and foreboding appearance. His appearance is often linked with the coming of death, and many Irish villagers believe that if the Doulahan stops at a person's home, that individual is going to die.
Mm.
The head of the Doulahan is one of the most striking aspects of the myth. His face is said to be covered in rotting flesh, emitting the foul smell of decaying cheese.
Ooh.
And his grin is wide and grotesque. His eyes glowing with an eerie fire dart around, constantly searching for souls to take. Can you see, that made me want to throw up.
Yeah.
Just fiery, glowing eyes darting back and forth. I don't know why that bothered me so much. Out of this whole description.
It's a really good visual.
Yeah.
Ma'am. Is she stealing stuff out of your bag?
No. She's sniffing and rubbing, though.
Oh.
The last time I came over here and she did that, Loki, like, the next day, I look over and his entire top half of his body is in my backpack.
He's like, what do you got in here? It smells like a cat.
Right. As he rides through the night, his horse moves so quickly that flames come from its nostrils and hooves, making it clear that the Dullahan's arrival is a harbinger of doom. The Dullahan's most terrifying feature, however, is his ability to strike fear into anyone who gazes upon him. It is said that if you make eye contact with him, you will be blinded either by a whip made of human spine or by him throwing a basin of blood into your eyes. This act is just one of the ways that he seals the fate of those who cross his path. The Dullahan is believed to appear most often during certain festivals and feast days, including Halloween. On these nights, villagers are warned to stay inside after dark as the Dullahan roams the land searching for souls to take. However, there is one known way to protect yourself from him: gold. The Dullahan is said to be terrified of gold, and even the smallest bit can send him and his steed fleeing in fear.
That's wild.
Right. For this reason, people in Ireland were once advised to keep gold close by as a defense against the specter of death. Now think about that. How many times as a kid did you get a gold coin chocolate? My kids get at least 2 or 3 of them every year.
I wonder if that's where that comes from.
That's I thought about that. I was like, that's crazy. One of the most compelling aspects of the Dullahan is the belief that he is a representation of the Celtic god Crom-Dubh. In pre-Christian Ireland, he was a fertility deity who demanded sacrifices, particularly human lives, to appease him.
That seems counterintuitive.
Like, we're going to kill somebody to have a baby.
Exactly. That seems very counterintuitive.
I wonder if that just meant like fertility for crops.
Or just in general.
Well,
not necessarily just people, but
right. You're still taking away to receive.
Yeah.
The method of sacrifice was decapitation, and the severing of the head became a symbol of his demand for life. This association between the Dullahan and the Crom-Dubh is central to understanding the deeper cultural significance of the myth. Here we go. As Christianity spread through Ireland in the 6th century, these sacrificial practices were condemned and eventually ceased. Now, let me say this. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think I'm good with that. I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah. However, the myth of the Dullahan continued, evolving from the human form of the Crom-Dubh into the headless horseman figure we recognize today. The Dullahan's journey through the night looking for victims is symbolic of the unyielding and inescapable nature of death. He is a reminder that death can strike at any time, and it doesn't discriminate. His role as a Grim Reaper figure, similar to the Grim Reaper in other cultures... What are you doing? Oh. Similar to the Grim Reaper in other cultures, reflects the fear and inevitability that comes with mortality. Despite the fear he instills, there's also a certain reverence for the Dullahan, as he embodies the transition from life to death and a passage that is much a part of life as life itself. Over time, the myth of the Dullahan spread beyond Ireland, influencing other cultures and appearing in various forms. The most famous example outside of Ireland is the story of the Headless Horseman in Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This American retelling of the Irish legend features a soldier who lost his head in the American Revolution and now roams the land in search of it during Halloween. The Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow bears many similarities to the Dullahan, including the horse and the quest for his lost head, though his purpose in the tale is somewhat different.
I will say, that is the movie Sleepy Hollow, right? With Johnny Depp?
It just said.
I think so. Because as you were, describing him, That's what I was imagining.
Listen,
was
I think I've seen
Christopher Walken's Headless Horseman.
I'm pretty sure that I've seen that movie.
That is one of my favorite movies.
I have to rewatch it, and I wanted to watch it with the kids, but I don't think it's kid friendly.
No, it is not. I think there's titties in it.
Okay, so I could. Never mind.
And you do see several beheadings, so titties are probably more fun than the beheadings. Honestly,
the littles would not be okay. I think it would be okay with.
No.
Maddie.
The middle one, traumatized.
Oh yeah,
she would be traumatized.
But the oldest one, I think she'd be. Good.
She'd be fine. She would probably like it.
The Dullahan has also appeared in German folklore, where a headless rider blows a horn to warn huntsmen of impending death. How does he blow a horn if he's headless?
Listen, we don't ask questions. We listen and we don't judge.
This figure, much like the Dullahan, serves as a reminder of the transience of life and the ever-present threat of death. These regional variations show how the Dullahan myth has evolved and adapted to different cultures, but its core message remains the same, that death is inevitable and it comes for everyone. There's a theme with mythology in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
In modern times, the Dullahan has found new life in literature, television, and video games. As the popularity of folklore and mythology has surged in recent years, the Dullahan has become a key figure in horror and fantasy genres. Its iconic headless appearance and association with death continue to captivate creators and audiences alike. The Dullahan's ghostly presence and the themes it represents, mortality, fate, and the afterlife, remain relevant today.
I didn't even question it.
As they have been for centuries. The legacy of the Dullahan is enduring, and it serves as a powerful symbol in Irish mythology. It reflects the universal fear of death and the unknown, as well as the cultural fascination with the afterlife. Its terrifying appearance and its ominous presence continue to haunt the imaginations of those who encounter its tale, ensuring that the Dullahan will remain a part of Irish folklore for generations to come. Whether through ancient stories or modern adaptations, the Dullahan's spectral ride through the Irish countryside will always be a haunting reminder of the inescapable nature of death and the mysteries that lie beyond the grave.
I like that. I'm reading through, following along with that. I was like, it's kind of interesting for us to condense all this history into a few minutes.
Yeah.
Of it, the storytelling, just even with just that, the iterations of the storytelling and how it's gone from just being a little tale we've used to scare the children, and how now we've got movies, books, all that, how the storytelling has changed throughout the centuries, really.
And this is the last story.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
This is a good one, too.
Okay. So, the Gravediggers Pub, which is also known as the John Kavanagh Pub, but everybody calls it Gravediggers, holds a unique and fascinating place in Dublin's history. Since its opening in 1833, the pub has been a staple in the community, attracting both regulars and curious visitors. It is situated next to Glasnevin Cemetery, and its location, combined with a series of eerie stories and ghostly occurrences, has earned it a reputation that straddles the line between myth and reality. The origins of the Gravediggers Pub date back to the early 19th century, when the pub first opened its doors just a year after Glasnevin Cemetery was established. The cemetery, which became the first of its kind in Ireland, was initially founded to allow people of all faiths to be buried together. This was a significant shift, as prior to its establishment, Catholics had been denied burial rights in Protestant cemeteries. I think even there's a famous, I know there's a photo of it, but there's a Protestant cemetery and a Catholic cemetery that butt up against each other, and they're separated by a wall, right? Mm-hmm. So one or the other. Wife is Protestant, husband's Catholic, can't be buried in the same cemetery, but they're back to back and their headstones touch. Like they meet over the fence.
That's cute.
Catholics, with this political and religious change, Glasnevin Cemetery became a symbol of unity in death, and the pub that sat next to it was bound to carry a dark and deeply entrenched history. John Kavanagh Pub opened in 1833, and its early patrons were largely grave diggers who worked at the nearby cemetery. These men were known to stop by for a drink after a hard day's work digging graves. The location, which once had a main entrance to the cemetery next to the pub, made the pub a popular haunt for grave diggers and body snatchers, who were known to exhume corpses for medical purposes during that time. They were probably also stealing jewelry and clothes. Although these associations have long since faded, they led to the pub being affectionately known as the Gravediggers. The pub itself is often described as a traditional no-frills watering hole. It is known for its dark wood furnishings, low ceilings, and a distinctly unpretentious atmosphere. John Kavanagh, who inherited the bar from his father-in-law, ran the establishment with his wife, Suzanne O'Neill. The pub became a focal point for locals and grieving families who had just laid their loved ones to rest at the nearby cemetery. And in keeping with the working-class nature of the establishment, it remained simple, never investing in elaborate decorations or modern technologies like telephones or sound systems. The focus remained squarely on the pints and the conversation. Over the years, the Kavanagh family has continued to run the pub, and it has remained a popular gathering spot. By the 1980s, Eugene Kavanagh, the great-great-grandson of the original owner, expanded the pub to accommodate more customers. During his tenure, the pub faced economic downturns, but Eugene made strategic improvements, including the addition of a larger lounge area to cater to a more diverse clientele. Later, in the early 2000s, I think that's Kieran.
Yeah.
Kavanagh, Eugene's son, returned to the family business after studying culinary arts in Italy. Under Kieran's guidance, the pub expanded its food offerings, including traditional Irish fare and innovative dishes like Irish spring rolls. Today, the pub is still run by the Kavanagh family, with Kathleen Kavanagh managing the business and her children, including Kieran, helping to oversee operations. Despite the pub's humble exterior, its proximity to Glasnevin Cemetery has given rise to numerous ghost stories over the years. The most frequent spectral visitor is a man dressed in a tweed jacket. This elderly gentleman is often seen quietly sipping a pint at the bar before disappearing, leaving no trace behind. His presence has been noted by many of the pub's patrons, including Eugene Kavanagh, who once recalled an incident in which a group of customers was complaining that the old men in tweed had been left undisturbed at the bar while they were being asked to leave. When Eugene went back to check, there was no one there, just an empty glass of Guinness. This sighting has been repeated on several occasions, and the man in tweed has become one of the pub's most persistent ghostly figures. In addition to the man in tweed, there are several other accounts of paranormal activity that have occurred at the pub. One such story involves a particularly grumpy Alsatian dog, Alsatian, that was allowed inside by Uncle Jack Kavanagh, who worked at the pub in the 1970s. Jack had left the dog inside while he went upstairs for a moment, but when he returned, the dog was backing away from the bar, hackles raised and growling at an unseen presence. Jack, concerned that there might be robbers, tried to encourage the dog to attack, but the dog refused to go back into the bar. Upon investigation, Jack found no one there, but the money was still accounted for, and the dog was calm again in the morning. Another chilling story comes from Anne Kavanagh, Kieran's sister, who experienced an apparition of a young girl while living above the bar. Anne was just about to fall asleep when she saw a young girl in a white nightdress smiling at her from the foot of the bed. I would have moved out.
Right.
The girl had curly brown hair and was dressed in an old-fashioned frilly nightgown. After blinking a few times to make sure she was awake, Anne found that the girl had vanished without a trace. Anne has often shared this unsettling experience, noting that she has never been drinking at the time, further supporting the claim that the apparition was not a product of imagination or intoxication. These eerie events are part of the pub's growing reputation for paranormal occurrences, leading Eugene Kavanaugh to invite mediums and ghost hunters into the pub to explore the phenomenon. The pub even hosted seances, and many regulars have their own ghost stories, some of which are tied to relatives buried in the cemetery next door. Over the years, the Kavanaugh family has grown accustomed to these unexplained events, though Kieran himself has never directly experienced them. He recalls feeling the presence of past generations of Kavanaughs while working in the pub, but has yet to see any ghostly figures for himself. The nickname Gravedigger's Pub was adopted by locals in recent decades, and while some stories are difficult to verify, they have become an integral part of the pub's rich narrative. One tale suggests that gravediggers, after completing their shifts, would knock on the cemetery wall to signal their desire for a pint, and that the Kavanaugh family would pass drinks through a hole in the wall. While historian Kieran Wallace has cast doubt on this story, pointing out that the pub door and cemetery gate are only a few steps apart, it remains a cherished part of the pub's lore. Despite the ghost stories and eerie tales that surround it, the Gravedigger's Pub remains a beloved establishment in Dublin. Its authentic, old-school ambiance, paired with the rich history and strong sense of community, continues to draw both locals and tourists alike. The Kavanaugh family's dedication to maintaining the pub as a place for all people has earned it the title of Best Community Pub in Ireland by Irish Hospitality Global. Today, the Gravedigger's Pub continues to serve as a beacon of Dublin's past and a testament to the endearing appeal of its unique history. The combination of a rich heritage, a haunted reputation, and the timeless allure of a traditional Irish pub ensures that John Kavanaugh Pub, better known as the Gravediggers, will continue to be a memorable destination for generations to come. I like that.
I do too. I can just feel what the feeling is like there.
Right.
Like, it's giving cheers.
Yeah.
Everybody knows your name there.
It's giving, I don't know, a pub where dudes get drunk and sing together.
Right.
With no music. It's just them.
Olay, 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 olay.
This was a long one. Almost
good,
2 hours.
I had fun with this one.
Yeah, this was a good one. I liked it.
I had fun. Okay, well, make sure that you're following us on the socials like Facebook,
Instagram,
TikTok,
Blue Sky, and YouTube.
Email us at wondersweird
@gmail.com.
I don't have anything for this one.
That's fine. Be sure to check out our nonprofit of the month,
Which was She's the First.
and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.